Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll start heading toward your seats, we'll start the meeting in 1 minute. Members of the audience who would like to speak on items on the agenda need to fill out a blue card and give it to the county clerk or Ray at the desk.
No, budget. Budget, then we
Just above, just before the. Councilmember Braden, are you about ready to start the meeting? Sorry, I shouldn't embarrass you that way.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Destin City Council for September 6th.
I don't believe we have faster.
And we don't. And we're not going to have an invocation this evening. The pastor wasn't able to join us, but I'd like all of you to stand for a minute of silence, and would appreciate your thoughts for all of the hurricane victims and survivors in Texas, and maybe even try to wheel Irma a little farther east out in the open ocean. Councilmember Marler, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Really miss Councilmember Marler when I make an attempt to do that. First item of business tonight is going to be the special public hearings for fiscal year 2018, which we will begin with the millage rate. Mr. Burns, would you read by title?
Ordinance number 17-25-CN, an ordinance of the City of Destin of Okaloosa County, Florida, adopting the final levying of ad valorem taxes for the City of Destin for fiscal year 2018 and providing for an effective date.
Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn this portion of the meeting over to Mr. Bragg Farmer, my finance director.
This is the adoption of the ad valorem tax rate that you set as a preliminary rate of 1.615, which was the excuse me, was the rate that we charged this past year. This is higher than the rollback rate of 1.615. But this would maintain the tax rate at the same rate, as I said, as it is this current year. The motion's before you to adopt.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mayor. I move that the council adopt ordinance 17-25-CN on first reading, adopting a proposed fiscal year 2018 millage rate of 1.615 mils, which is more than the rollback rate of 1.5615 mils.
Can I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Council? Hearing no discussion.
Mayor, this is a public hearing.
No, I'm sorry. Any discussion from the audience? Not seen. Any activity? Raise your hand or wave at me or get my attention. Don't let me go past you. I'll call for the vote. This vote is a unanimous yes. We have first reading of ordinance 17-26-CN, the adopting of the fiscal year 2018 budget. Mr. Burns.
Ordinance number 17-26-CN, an ordinance of the City of Destin making appropriations for certain expenditures, expenses, capital improvements, and certain indebtedness of the City of Destin, Florida for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2017 and ending September 30th, 2018, and providing for an effective date. And we're here on first reading, and it is a public hearing.
This is the adoption of the actual budget. If you look at your agenda item, it shows all the funds and the funding level at each one of those, including the 2 CRAs. We did make the adjustment from our budget workshop. There is $100,000 has been allocated to the fire department for lifeguard services for the year. I believe that was the major change that was made in the workshop, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them.
Thank you. I'm not too sure who's controlling the screen tonight. I need it put back to discussion. I don't see Webb around. Ray? Can you clear the screen?
You're good.
Oh, it's clear. I'm sorry. Council discussion. Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone from the audience wish to make a comment? Not seeing any, not hearing anyone from council. Oh, wait a minute, excuse me. Councilmember Ramsell.
I'll go ahead and make the recommended motion. I move that council adopt ordinance 17-26-CN on first reading to provide for a balanced budget for fiscal year 2018 and schedule the second reading for September 18th, 2017.
Second. Thank you. Second by Councilmember Braden. Any further discussion by council? If not, I call for the vote. Unanimous yes.
Mayor, before we get to the agenda approval section, Ms. Kopp couldn't be here today due to Hurricane Irma, and so I'm going to start the executive session, okay. But I won't take part in it due to my conflict. But I believe you have a paper in front of you for you to read a certain portion of that, Mayor.
Yes. This session of the Destin City Council is hereby convened as noticed by publication in a newspaper of general circulation, the Destin Log, on Saturday, September 2nd, 2017. Should I introduce Attorney Warner? Or
yeah.
You will. Okay. The floor is yours.
Pursuant to Section 286.011, subsection 8 Florida statutes, at this time I'd like to request that we adjourn to an executive session so that I, the attorney of record, in the case of City of Destin, or BI Inc., Dewey Destin's Harborside LLC plaintiff versus City of Destin, Florida defendant, in Circuit County or Circuit Court case, First Judicial Circuit in and for Okaloosa County, Florida, case number 2016-CA-003672F, so that I may receive the council's advice regarding the strategy to be used in this case and for consideration of a settlement proposal. The entire session will be recorded by a court reporter. The transcript will be filed with the city clerk and available to the public at the conclusion of the litigation discussed today. A copy of the published notice of the session is hereby identified as Exhibit A and will be attached to the transcript of the executive session. In addition to the mayor and city council members in attendance, the following persons will be in attendance at the session. Myself, William G. Warner of the Warner Law Firm, 519 Grace Avenue, Panama City, Florida. Alicia D. Carruthers, Esquire, also an attorney with my firm. Kimberly Kopp of Boggin, Munns & Munns, PA, Gateway Center, 1000 Legion Place, Suite 1000, 10th floor, P.O. Box 2807, Orlando, Florida, 32801. It's my understanding Ms. Cobb will be appearing by telephone, and the city manager, Carice Lejeune. At this time, will the mayor and council members in attendance please identify themselves for the record?
Councilmember Braden, will you start us off?
Rodney Braden, Destin City Council.
Preble Ramswell, Destin City Council.
Do you want those that will be leaving?
Only those in attendance.
Okay, only those that will be attending, please. But do the ones that not need to give an explanation why they're
I don't believe so.
conflicted? Okay. Mr. Foreman?
Jim Foreman, Destin City Council.
Kyron Marler, Destin City Council.
Scott Fisher, Mayor.
Chatham Morgan, Destin City Council.
Carice Lejeune, Destin City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I estimate the executive session will take approximately 60 minutes. At the conclusion of the executive session, the council will reconvene the public hearing and accept any motions if applicable, and the mayor will end the session.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, you will have to leave the room. This will be a legal.
No, Mayor, actually, the council's going to go across the hall to
we're
the
gonna
conference
leave.
room instead, so, yeah.
Excuse me, you all get to stay. We're going to leave. This, as the Mr. Wood said, is probably, Mr. Warner said, it's probably going to last close to an hour. I expect to be reconvened at about 7:15. That's just an estimate. Thank you. We'll come to order. We'll reconvene the meeting. The legal proceedings are finished. No action was taken for the record. We'll move to agenda approval. Does any member of the council have any items they would like to modify or remove from the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull item, where did it go?
M?
Yes, item M, please. 7M.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd also like that J be removed from the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, which?
J?
J? And we'll remove these to, what point on the agenda, Mr. Burns, should we move these to?
When you get to the consent agenda, you can just consider those two matters right before you vote on the consent agenda.
Okay. Let's see, we need a vote on that. I'll ask, any further discussion?
Motion to approve.
Any further comments? Have a motion, have a second? I'll second. Mr. Murphy, have a second. Any further discussion? If not, I call the question. Unanimous, yes. Next item is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion. Have a second from Mr. Destin. Any discussion, corrections? If not, I call the question. Whoop, excuse me. Now I call it. Unanimous, yes. I have a proclamation. Particularly as we look at Texas, we know that many people face severe challenges in these times. Sometimes these events devastate an individual or even a whole family. The Wheeler family has faced a terrible ordeal. The Wheeler family's faith in each other and their ability to persevere even in the face of overwhelming circumstances propelled them to move forward. Tonight, we would like to recognize their resiliency and offer our support. I'd like to, if you wish also to support them, donations can be made in a GoFundMe account set up for the family. If I could please have the Wheeler family meet me at the podium, I'll present the proclamation. Whereas already dealing with the news that the brain tumor one of their children has battled for years has returned and became more aggressive, the Wheeler family is now struggling to recover after a recent fire destroyed their home and most of their possessions. Whereas 12-year-old Crescia Wheeler has been battling a brain tumor for 2 years and now she faces a new health scare. The tumor has begun creating cells that could cause meningitis, a potentially fatal swelling of the membranes and around the brain and spinal cord. Whereas the family maintained a great attitude and courage throughout this ordeal, and whereas their faith and their ability to preserve even in the face of overwhelming circumstances prevailed them to keep moving forward. Chris Wheeler, a father of 3 children, is optimistic things will get better. He said he is just glad that his family is safe and that having his family together is what really counts. Whereas, while most people look at these setbacks and see them as insurmountable obstacles, the Wheeler family believes that no matter what life throws their way, they will persist and preserve. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed that I, Scott Fisher, Mayor of the City of Destin, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize the Wheeler family for their perseverance and unity in the face of adversity, a true example of strength and courage that gives us all hope. I hereby urge the community to join together in helping this family face these severe challenges. So done, the 6th day of September 2017, by Scott Fisher.
Mayor, do you know the name of the GoFundMe account?
No, I do. I'm sorry.
I can get it and make it available.
Okay, it should be GoFundMe in their name. But
Thank you.
I haven't.
If maybe we can
I'm
get.
sorry, I don't have any more information than that.
If we can maybe get their address and send it to, some people may not like the GoFundMe thing, so, yeah.
And Councilmember Ransell, appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's time for our public comments on agenda items that are not included. Obviously, anyone that wishes to speak on item number 6, that will be a public hearing, and you're welcome to do so at that time. The other items, I'll call the name of those that filled out a card and allow them to speak first. And we can begin with Mr. Dewey Destin. He left us. Never mind. I'll come back to him if he comes back in. And Lisa. Josh Summers, would you like to lead us off? When you come to the mic, please hit the button to turn the red light on and give us your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Josh Summers. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Emerald Coast Association Realtors, 1180 Allen Loop Drive. I'm here representing Emerald Coast Association Realtors, all the realtors in the area, also Florida Realtor Association. We're in opposition to you all supporting that home rule and the relief from the statutory preemption related to short-term rentals. So just want to state for the record that we're in opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, I'm not too sure I've ever called you Claude Perry before, so I'm hesitant with that. I didn't get a smile.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Claude Perry, 732 Harbor Boulevard. I wanted to discuss just briefly the noise ordinance that you're proposing for tonight, first reading. I appreciate the fact that there are neighborhoods who are having difficulty with noise, and I understand that thoroughly, and I support the effort of the council to give some relief to the full-time residents to increase their quality of life. I understand that, but I'm trying to address the issue of the harbor, the South Harbor District, which is the festive marketplace that was created by previous councils many years ago. This goes back to when we first started talking about a boardwalk along the harbor, and probably 3 or 4 mayors ago. So the precedent for the harbor district, it seems to me, has been long ago established, and I am concerned that we didn't create the festive marketplace. The property owners didn't create the festive marketplace. The city council created the festive marketplace and has encouraged property owners to provide the facilities that would support a festive marketplace. So including the boardwalk, actually the construction of a boardwalk itself. So I'm concerned that you're setting a bad precedent for future councils, and that you're absolutely reversing what previous council members, previous councils have long ago established. So it seems to me this is a simple solution. You've got a list of exemptions, and it seems to me that the festive marketplace should be exempted. And there are but just a few. From Emerald Grand to the yacht club, there are no houses, there are no residences. There's one condominium, and they are mostly rentals. People who want to come there and take part in the festive activities along the harbor. So I'm very concerned about this. I hate to see you disrupt or create. The property owners have made a substantial investment along the harbor, and to reverse that by saying you're going to control the with this particular ordinance especially, it's very subjective, and so I ask you to exempt it from this first reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tadlock.
Good evening. I'm Guy Tadlock, Honorable Mayor, Councilors. I live at 502 Noriego in Destin. And I wanted to also speak about agenda item 5A and basically comment that Destin must have a workable noise ordinance. If we want to preserve our goal of being a high-end, world-class vacation destination, we've got to do that. I don't think we want to get into a situation where we get the reputation that one of our neighbors from the east has of being a party town. But I'd like to add that there's several reasons for this. If you look at the high intensity of our business district, we're really jammed into a very close place, and the prior speaker mentioned of the festive environment that everybody has worked so hard to achieve, and that's been very successful for the city. Nobody wants to hamper that. There just needs to be some guidelines to keep that playing field level. We have many outdoor venues. Things have changed in the past. People like to go to a restaurant and sit down in an air-conditioned building and maybe have a band or something like that, and that's kind of changed now, and that's a good thing. People like the outdoors. We've got a lot to offer with beautiful scenery and nice weather. But a noise ordinance is not affecting just one area of the town. It affects as you read this ordinance, it affects a lot of areas of the town. And it is set up in a tier system where, based on the time, the criteria actually drops down. I think there's a lot of good work that has been put into that. There's been a lot of comparisons to other cities in the state. But I'd like to add that back in 1990 or around 1990, the city passed a noise ordinance, and there was a lot of work went into that noise ordinance as well. This noise ordinance was a little bit encumbered because there was a lot of scientific stuff. There was some pretty sophisticated measurement equipment, had to have trained personnel. The city wasn't really staffed to do that, and that kind of encumbered this noise ordinance. But that noise ordinance served the city well. I mean, it was basically a speed limit. I mean, it was sitting there, and people knew that that there was a threshold that they must stay below. So just the sheer presence of the old noise ordinance really helped. Now, I used to live in a college town, before moving here, and they had a very effective noise ordinance. In fact, it was very similar to the one that was passed by the city in 1990. And that noise ordinance is still in effect. They still use noise measurement devices, but they have a police force. They've got trained people. They've got the ability to enforce that. This new ordinance that's before you addresses many of those shortcomings of the old ordinance. And I think that it will basically repair some of those things that make it a lot easier. And, you know, it could be very, very helpful going forward. Nobody wants to harm our community or to hurt commerce or to disrupt our tourist trade. But we need this ordinance to kind of balance the playing field and make our city more attractive to everyone. And maybe a little bit later on, I can maybe get some information and share with you. I don't have this tonight, but one of the things that's changed in our community is we used to have families that came down here and stayed for a week at the time. And that's kind of not the case now. We've got more short three-day rentals than we do one-week rentals. And those three-day rentals, they're not renting for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They're basically renting for the weekends, and then they're leaving. So I think a noise ordinance is going to help in that regard. It's going to hopefully level the playing field, and it will attract people that would want to come to our community and stay long-term rather than just come down for a weekend and then leave. So I certainly ask your support in the noise ordinance. I think it's a good thing, and it will continue to serve the city well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I apologize, I'm having trouble reading this name. Christopher Cristobal? Cristiani? Sorry.
I'm Christopher Cristiani, 4406 Stonebridge Road. Good evening, Council and Mayor Fisher. I own and operate several amusement attractions down at the Harbor Walk Village. Started back in 2011 with the Kid Zone, then we built the Harbor Walk Mining Company, then we added the zip line down there, and then added the arcade down on the second floor of the Emerald Grand. When we first started back in 2011 or so, the Harbor Walk was not visited by families and kids and children. It was mostly an adult-oriented bar drinking type of environment. And over the years, as we started putting all these attractions, we slowly changed the environment into a festive, safe, family-oriented place. An ordinance like this would impact and change that type of environment. I employ approximately 40 employees with all our various operations. An ordinance that would affect our business would slowly trickle down to the workforce as well, and to, of course, all the merchants and business operators down there at the Harbor Walk Village. So I implore you to consider the fact that creating such an ordinance, there's no solution to how we're going to accommodate all these people that work for us and all of these investments that we have. It was a very serious investment over the past 5 to 6 years to turn the Harbor Walk Village into a safe, family-oriented place. I cater to approximately 120,000 children on a yearly basis. All our visitors that come to visit our establishments are staying at the various residences and condos and homes, all in the neighborhood. They're not really complaining. They actually come to us and say, when is the fireworks show? When is the concerts? When is the music going on? They're very happy, and they come to our environment because of this festive marketplace that has become a very safe, fun place for families to come and visit. You know, as we all know, we're a drive-to destination resort from 5 different states. You don't even have to get on an airplane to come visit us. We are a fun, great environment that a noise ordinance would affect us in a very, very negative way. So I implore you to consider the fact that we've worked really hard to get to this point. There's a lot of investments at the Harbor Walk, and it would really, really affect us in a very negative way by coming in with an ordinance like this. And I think, honestly, we haven't really impacted people in a negative way compared to how much positive we've created. So I appreciate the time that I've been given to speak to you all. Mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, go right ahead.
Sir, which business do you have that this ordinance would impact?
I have the Kid Zone, which has got the bungee trampolines and the hamster balls. I own the zip line down there.
Does any of that create a noise that would be impacted by this?
Well, if a noise ordinance would say, okay, our concerts would have to be, we can't play our music loud for the concerts, okay? So at the Blue Tower, there's a stage there that a band plays. They play free falling when people are jumping off the tower. We have a 100-foot free fall. So imagine no more music down there because it's too loud, and that would exceed the noise level that is acceptable. So when you start taking music and entertainment away, and eventually I'm afraid that it may even impact the fireworks show if it's too loud, or, you know, I don't. An ordinance, what kind of worries me is that once something is created like this, it trickles down to other things. And so if you can't have music and concerts, why would people need to, you know, the families, why would families want, why do they come to the Harbor Walk? Because there's entertainment there. And it's free entertainment, and the parking is free. Yeah, we have a parking issue, we all know about that. But they park, they walk for a block to come and listen to music, and then they go and they go on the zip line, or they go to the mining company, they visit all the restaurants, you know, they do all the shopping there. I feel like a noise ordinance would impact all those visitors, because they're going to say, well, why do we need to go to the Harbor Walk? There's no entertainment. It's basically the entertainment. Imagine if we can't have concerts, if there's no more concerts, why would families want to come visit us at the Harbor Walk? Because just my businesses alone down there is not enough to just pull them in. It's a big attraction, but it's not enough. They come for the food, they come for the great view, they come for, you know, the music, the shows, You know, they come for all that. And the people that are coming now, compared to what used to come in 2011, is a completely type of demographics of our customer base. It is all family-oriented. Every year, my business increases. When I started in 2011, I was only open 4 months of the whole year. In 2012, 13, 14, it went from that to 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Do you know that I stay open year-round now? I only close in January for maintenance. So I employ these people year-round. I would never think that back in 2011, we would stay open more than 4 months. But now we're literally open almost year-round.
I understand. So you're more impacted indirectly through this ordinance to the other
Well,
things.
I speak on behalf of all the employees that I have, because imagine if I tell them, hey, you know what, our visitor rate, which I believe is in excess of 2.5 million people that come to visit the Harbor Walk on a yearly basis, in my opinion, I believe that will dwindle down to what it was like in 2011 with the noise ordinance. Then I'm only open 4 months of the year. Where are all these people going to go and work? And not just in my establishments, but all the establishments down at the Harbor Walk Village. Where will they all go?
I understand. Thank you. Mayor, that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Gary Jarvis.
Captain Gary Jarvis, 804. Captain Gary Jarvis, 804 Mars Street. I've got a couple. I read the old ordinance and I read the new one. And the first instinct I had after reading them both, before I reread them again, was, what's the justification for this new ordinance? We have had an ordinance, I think it's been in place since about 1990. It served this community well for almost, 2.5 decades. We have one that requires dB measurements that are enforceable in a court of law and allows for distinctive noise enforcement and not particularly somebody's opinion. So the real issue I have with this new ordinance is it's shocker when you're dealing with government. It's way too broad and it's way too vague. I really think that it's going to allow for potential abuses by city employees and or officers of the law who, in their opinion, and maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they just had a run-in with someone else that ruffled their feathers, but in their opinion that the noise is too loud, and we're going to write you a citation. Good luck enforcing that in a court of law, like I said. It's real important that we try to do the right things with all folks that live in our community. And there are some issues in the private residential areas sometimes where, especially some of these rental units where there might be a wedding or something and they're playing loud music and it's bothersome. But most of those homeowners associations already have rules concerning noise. You can't do that after 10 o'clock and such as that. I really think that, maybe some of those things you leave up to the neighbors, and the rest, the neighbors are going to call the police, and the police will come and politely ask the people to keep it down. It doesn't turn into a citation issue. It turns into a public issue. So I think it's going to be really, really important. I really wish, I know this is the first reading, but I really wish that you guys would take into consideration, really what is the motivation here? Are we really trying to make the community better, or are we just going to try to target a certain group or a certain, the industry on the harbor to get their personal agenda passed, or do we really take a look back and take the ordinance that's already in place and utilize it the way it was intended and allow that to be the law of our community? Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Laird.
Hey, I'm Alan Laird, 116 Harbor Boulevard, Destin here on the harbor. A lot of the, I'm glad I didn't go first. I would have had no material. I can wing off the previous ones. I'm usually short for words. But my first thought is with Mr. Gary Jarvis is, what prompted this? And I asked council members, what is the procedure when we want to say we need to look at an ordinance or we need to explore it, expand it, and whatnot? And I haven't gotten a straight answer. I've asked, where's the problem lie in this ordinance? Because it's a big, broad brush. It's a 20-foot tall roller. And you're swiping out you're creating a lot of instinct and matting up a lot of things that may not have been the intent. I've heard everything from, it's a short-term rentals. Police department's pretty strong. They go over there, it's public complaint, so it's a nuisance, they're arrested, and that's their spot. Then I've heard that it was, of course, the fireworks thing to start this. And I'm not going to pull punches, not my style, but I hope this is because somebody got their ego stepped on or whatnot, what prompted this. So after I had nothing but unsatisfied comments, when I said, okay, maybe I've missed something. Let me go to my city council, my city hall, and let me pull up the complaints. Let me call the code enforcement and say, have I had any problems? Comment was, we hadn't had a complaint since 1998. But then when I go get the records, I can't find that much that far back, so I grabbed 5 years. So I'm still on the point of what brought all this up? And like I said, I've heard a lot of different stories. I haven't heard the truth because I believe I know the truth. But so I go, like any citizen, I believe would go, and I pull the complaints from the city. And in those complaints, these go back to 2012, 9/12 of 2012, to what appeared to be dates. I found something even a little questionable, like all of a sudden we just popped up with some complaints here and handwritten instructions. But so I go back, this is what I'm handed. I had my lawyer come up and pick it up because he was in the neighborhood and I love his kids, they're doing real good in college. Don't mind paying them. And he pulls it all up. We got legitimate complaints. We all know Barataria is a tough thing, that location of it in the Harbor District. But if you also remember, it was built with that knowledge. Hell, it's a commercial building. Your ordinance says primary use of a property. Hell, their use is commercial, primary use. That's a tough item. Man, I don't want to be on either side of that one. And that is really the exception. That is where the original complaint came from back in 12. Then we go on, I'm just going to go through them. That was a mixed use issue. It's a tough issue. I wish everybody could find satisfaction there. The next was the complaint in 2013, hunters back on the bay. It wasn't me. I might have gone out there years ago, but it's a complaint, hunters in the bay. And I'll surrender this one and leave. The next one was a short-term rental issue. The next one was a short-term rental issue. The next one was at the Palms. And I'll say, with my reading of it, somebody should have been arrested. It was an ugly situation that not the way it would be the way I operate. Then I come down, design question was, hey, what is the most, a customer called about engineering, do y'all have anything on sound? Wood versus, that's no. Next one is construction noise. They're starting too early. Now we're moving on up to 2015, a stereo store. Somebody had a stereo store, no regard, no sound booth, and was blaring all through the neighborhood. Next one is the helicopter. They juice those things up in the morning and get through the test. It's pretty loud. Then the next one was the airport. The next one was another helicopter. The next one was a complaint by a neighbor over our library. The library was getting their grass cut before 7 to beat the heat. And so they got a complaint against the library. And I noticed that got settled. I had the briefest comments over here. It just went away. But that's in 13, 15 here. We come down. One was a next door neighbor complaint. And that was music too loud. And I just named all of them to you. We got the one mixed use of Barataria. Then somehow something lands in my hand recently of 2 handwritten ones. This is where they go to the police. Mr. Joe Forgiano either didn't leave records and nobody wanted the records about, so, the history I got is why he's here. The ordinance in 1990, me and this neighbor here spent a lot of time together. And on opposite sides of it, but we were always amicable. It was workable. I hear comments that the DB meter, it takes a lot of education. If I was intelligent enough, I would take your phone, and the app is free. You can get a DB meter on your phone. Some people say they charge my employees because all my managers have to. Said it was $1.25. So, technology's come a long ways. Your heavy base meters, etc. Okay, time is out. So what I'm asking, my question is, real quickly, I went in partners on this boardwalk, the Festive Marketplace, with the city. I have a stripe across my land. And I went in partners for a Festive Marketplace. And if it's on a personal level here and not based factually, which I can't find it, please provide it for me, then what are you saying? You don't want the partnership no more? Because I invested my money. I've since added decks and overlooked the boardwalk, etc. So that's what we all went into. I think this ordinance maybe has some target spots. I don't sense a whole lot of sincerity of what is the true mission here. I don't think there was a workshop. We're here at the first reading. We can't even speak. Next time we get to speak, hey, I just want to know what prompted my tax dollars and other fellow people. I employ 300 plus, over 500 in this county. Well, what prompted this to take a sweeping brush and say, hey, short-term rentals, handle it. Residential, handle it. Division, handle it. But I went in partners with the city council, and I'm not sure if any of y'all were here when I signed my lease with the city. I invested in good faith with the city, and now the city doesn't want to be partners no more? Because this is detrimental. I deal with this ordinance in Grayton Beach. It's a bed and breakfast community. This would shut down, audible, just if you can hear it. That's somebody walking down the street could make a complaint. You don't have to be probably. I think you got a broad brush. I think your motives are maybe overlapping or not true, not sincere, but I think somebody better step back. And I ask you as a taxpayer and a citizen and employer of this community, and let's get down to what it really is here. And go from there. And thank you for your time. It's been a pretty good partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kroll?
Yeah, if I was smart enough, I guess it would be. Got your DVD? Yeah, I got to get $39 a month for free DVD.
Bruce Crowell, 42 Terracotta Way, Destin. Been here many times before, so I don't think I have to even go through all the formality of that. But I think everybody here really did a great job of hitting all the items. But I think that Alan's last thing that he said was probably the best thing, and that was that, I don't know how many years ago it was, 14, 15 years ago, when Craig Barker was here, this mayor, he was like the poster child for the Festival Marketplace, and we built it, and we became partners in it, and we said that everything south of 98 along the harbor, that the sounds of the harbor are the sounds of the harbor. Music, diesel engines, voices, singing, screaming on the sea blaster. Those are the sounds of the harbor. That's why people come here. I could have a separate conversation with the gentleman that wants to talk about length of stay, because I've been in the hospitality business for 46 years. I know why the length of stay is shorter. By the way, ours this summer was almost 6 nights at the Emerald Grand, so it's coming back. It used to be like 3.5, 3.3 when I was with Abbott Resorts, which is now Resort Quest. It was 7, and we totally booked July by January 31st. But things change, and they change for a lot of reasons. But noise is not one of them. So I liked Alan when he said we have a partnership. We have a partnership in the festival marketplace. And we all put up a bunch of money to be partners in that. And I think we had we have a noise ordinance right now, and the decimeter works. Being in the, having to listen to bands and so forth over the years in all different kinds of places, we always have a decimeter to see if they're too loud. We have guests in the Emerald Grand that from time to time have complained about a band being too loud at McGuire's, which is across the street. And I met with them, and they enclosed their upper deck there so that the noise didn't come across the street to the units on the north side. We got sometimes too noisy at Coyote Ugly, and we told them about it, and they had to dial it down. We police ourselves as it relates to noise. As far as out in the neighborhoods, I live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of the houses where, actually they're behind me. I live in a less expensive neighborhood. But I'm backed up to a neighborhood to have these big $2 million houses that decide that they want to have a wedding reception at a house instead of a banquet facility. And that, sometimes my dog can't even hear me when I call her to come in because the DJ is playing the music so loud 125 feet away from my back door. So I understand enforcement there, but that's a separate thing. The harbor's the harbor. It's a wonderful festival marketplace, and I think that there's some kind of overreach here as I read the ordinances. So I wanted to tell you that. Thank you.
I've got a question. Bruce, there used to be in existence a business association down on the harbor.
Destin Harbor Business Association.
And one thing you said a few minutes ago is that you police yourselves to take care of those kinds of problems because it hurts business. Now, as I've listened to this, what has occurred to me is that it would seem like that would be an ideal way of taking care of this kind of situation. We're almost exclusively talking about south of 98 from the harbor down, and as I recall, that seemed to work very well. So I'm just bringing it up as a means of maybe taking a look at this ordinance and seeing if we couldn't do a fix to it where the businesses would really be important to enforce the noise.
Well, you know, we do police ourselves. That's what I just got
Yeah,
finished saying about McGuire's.
You did.
And, you know, I've been there, you know, since day one, since when we dug the hole in the ground.
Yes.
And I've never had anybody come up to me, other than somebody staying in the Emerald Grand, and saying something was too loud. Not in 11, this was our 11th season. I have never had that. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Hello, Council. Hi. Johnny Fuller, 172 Harbor Boulevard, Tailfins Ale House and Oyster Bar. And gosh, it's hard to add anything to what the rest of these guys have already said, so eloquently spoken. Once again, the Harbor District is the Harbor District. It's unique to any place in probably the country. I've been several places in the country, and that's why I decided to pull up residence here and actually establish my businesses here. So it is an entertainment venue. That's why people come to the harbor, for a venue, not just restaurants, not just for sounds and songs and entertainment or for families with the games and stuff. It's just the harbor is what makes Destin's vibe go. And you mess with that, you're messing with the wrong thing, truly. So once again, I just wanted to confirm I'm completely opposed to what's going on with the ordinances that was represented to me in the writings, and look to see the fine situation. I mean, when I read that, I just had to almost laugh, or I thought maybe that was just a go get you, Johnny, come to the meeting because you just got to talk about, you know, a fine every hour or something like that for a noise ordinance. When you're talking about the Harbor District is an entertainment mecca, if you lose that, you're going to lose a lot of Destin. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That is all the cards I have on this item. Ms. Lejeune, City Manager's reports.
Yes, sir. The first item is the fiscal year 2018 property and casualty insurance. We received these quotes late in the game after we had our workshop, but the increased numbers are reflected properly in the budget that you approved on first reading. But I'd like to invite our Human Resources Director, Ms. Jankowski, to go ahead and give you an overview of what these increases were.
Good evening. As you can see, the agenda item in front of you, I have provided increases based on all of those different line items. Overall, for the general liability property, it was about a 4.5% increase, total of about $20,000. We added a couple of properties, and we have some new equipment, so mainly that's what I see, in my opinion, for that little bit of an increase. And then for the workers' comp, you can see that we incurred some increase there. And that was really based on a couple different factors. There's an increase in payroll. We've had some claims experience. And also, we overall for the state, there was a small increase that we incurred on each of the risk class codes for that as well. So I'm open to entertain any questions you might have.
Council, questions? I don't believe there are any. Whoop, excuse me. Councilmember Dixon.
This increase of $20,000 in our workers' comp is very concerning to me. I really know there's not a lot we can do about that, but is it, because that just seems like, what is that, 20%? So I didn't tally it or anything like that, but that's a big increase in workers' comp. Is it just claims experience, or is it are we considered a small plan or a large plan, or why is this so much?
Sir, like I said, it's a combination of those different factors. The risk class codes, so we have different class codes for just administrative and all of those. Statewide was about a 14.5% increase, but what I understand from Florida League of Cities, we did not experience all of that. It was about a 5% increase or so for that. We have had some claims history as well. So right now, they're actually paying out more than they're collecting in premiums. And
good, that's the way we want
it. But I've started training with our supervisory levels, so I've started the process of trying to mitigate those. And my next step will be to have more education for staff on workers' comp training, and also to just, try to start those processes and mitigate those increases.
Thank you, and that's kind of going to be my next question. Do we have a plan to maybe try to cut down on some of this? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
I can add to that. Mr. June, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure when the ruling came down, but the courts, the state of Florida put in several pieces of legislation in an effort to reduce the workers' comp problem, and successfully did for a number of years, till a court a little over a year ago, I believe, threw it out, and that can no longer be applied, and that is increased workers' comp costs throughout the entire state. And I think the majority of this probably is coming from that settlement. The League of Cities is probably, with every business organization in the state, is trying to find a way to reenact some of that or do something to address this problem, but I don't think it's it's just us, it's almost every employee. Carice, did I do that close to correctly?
I defer to your knowledge on this, sir.
Okay. You still have the floor, Ms. Jim?
Yes, sir. The next item is the Clement Taylor Park renovation site plan. In your agenda item, it gives a history. Oh, there's a recommended motion. Okay.
A motion with the previous agenda item on the.
I'm sorry. Council members, could I have a motion, please?
I'll make the recommended motion. I move to authorize the city manager to engage Mr. Tom Conley to bind workers' compensation insurance with the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust and to engage Mr. Paul Dawson to bind all other lines of property and casualty coverage through Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust for fiscal year 2018.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
I have a motion. Mr. Marler seconds. Any discussion? Mr. Braden?
Mayor, on that it says it includes a drug-free credit. Do we have random drug tests? Oh, you just have to have a program. You don't have to actually get tested for it, just a program. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, we do. We have random, we have post-accident in a city vehicle and reasonable suspicion as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. If there's no other discussion. Unanimous, yes. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. The next item is the Clement Taylor Park renovation site plan. In your agenda item, you have the background going back to 2015 when the city applied for funding, $750,000 to renovate the Clement Taylor Park from the Restore Act Council, ORAC, which is part of the BP oil spill money. It's gone through several phases, including the county's multi-year implementation plan phase, and we are now in a position that it's been approved by the Treasury for consideration. The next step is for us to, through the county now, have our project uploaded into the grants website that has been determined by the Treasury Department. It will go through one more review and approval by Okaloosa County, but in the meantime, we need to go ahead and finish the design work for the actual site plan. We have Jenkins Engineering, which is one of our continuing services contractor. They've given us a proposal to complete the project design work for $25,300. This will come out of the impact fees for Parks and Recreation, not the general fund, and we can complete the project site plans in time for this to be reviewed for final funding by the Treasury Department. So if you have any questions, I do have Mr. Lance Johnson, our Parks and Recreation Director here, that can answer any specific questions you might have regarding this project.
Excuse me. Can I have a motion or discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Dixon.
I move to accept the proposal for services from Jenkins Engineering, Inc. in return for compensation not to exceed $25,300 using park impact fees, and further authorize the city manager to execute the agreement and make the appropriate budget amendment.
I have a motion. I have a second. Discussion by council. Any council discussion? If not, I call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. Ms. Lejeune, announcements?
Yes, sir. The last item under City Manager Report is announcements, and I do have a few. In lieu of the approaching Hurricane Irma impacting Northwest Florida, as of today, we suspended launch fees at Joe's Bayou Boat Ramp to assist in the quick removal of vessels from the water, of any boats that feel that they need to dry dock before the storm actually gets here. We will continue the suspension of the fees at Joe's Bayou Boat Ramp until which time that we feel there's no longer a danger of Hurricane Irma. The other announcements, our emergency management staff, we continue to monitor Hurricane Irma. We have been clearing storm drains and securing public property. We have had numerous staff and senior leader team meetings, and I feel confident that should Irma approach us from the Gulf, that my staff is ready to deal with whatever may come. We're working very closely with the Sheriff's Office, and tomorrow several staff members and myself will be attending a county emergency management meeting in the EOC. So we'll also be working closely with the county as Irma approaches. We ask that at this time residents and businesses start preparing. You can review our hurricane information guide for tips for prior, post, and during the storm. This can be found on the city's Facebook page and our city website at cityofdestin.com. Next announcement is on September 16th. There will be a coastal cleanup at Noriega Point at 9 a.m. This is a recurring annual international coastal cleanup, and Destin, as usual, will be participating. October 11th, there will be a groundbreaking for the Noriega Point stabilization project. We will have more information on that coming in the future. And on October 26th, we'll have our annual open house at the community center. Jim Shira will be doing his fish fry again. And October 30th is the annual fall festival at the community center from 5 to 9 p.m. And then the very last item I have is that I have a tentative workshop day for discussion of the Gulf Power purchase as requested by council, taking into consideration all meetings that are happening in September and October. I believe that Monday, October 9th, which is the second Monday of October, is an open night that if the council wishes, I can go ahead and set up the Gulf Power workshop for Monday, October 9th. And I'm just looking for consensus on that date.
I see no one expressing any concerns.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anything else?
Nope, that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have the first reading of ordinances. The first one is 17-19-CC, noise ordinance. As council asked me to join with Mr. Burns in attempting to come up with a noise ordinance, I'll give you a quick explanation of how we arrived here.
Mayor, let me just read the title real quick.
Yes,
just as a
please.
formality. So, ordinance number 17-19-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida relating to noise pollution control, amending Chapter 14, Article 2, Noise of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And we're here on first reading.
Ms. Lejeune?
I defer to either yourself or Mr. Burns, sir.
I will be happy to take the lead on this. We had several speakers earlier in the evening talk about the city having a noise ordinance. Early on in my activities with city government, I went to the sheriff's department to talk about enforcement of the noise ordinance, primarily short-term rentals that were creating a problem in the area that I lived in. I didn't know I was going to be running for city council at the time. And the sheriff explained to me that we basically did not have a noise ordinance. It was unenforceable. They had tried to take it to circuit judges on several occasions. The judges would not hear it. It was unenforceable, not usable. After I got on the council and began receiving complaints, I don't know why the city didn't get a lot of complaints other than the code department's not open on weekends, it's not open at nights, there's nobody to take the complaints. And the sheriff's department, they do get complaints and they react to the most flagrant ones, but their hands are tied because they have no ordinance to enforce. They can use other ordinances, other laws, state and county laws to attempt to break up a major disturbance, but no real noise ordinance. The city, I believe, in one situation tried to enforce it and was unsuccessful. So we started down this project looking, I guess I assume that most cities should have rules and regulations. We do have probably using a speed limit sign is not really truly directly comparable, but you expect a city of any size to have certain rules and regulations so that when people do get completely out of hand, you have the ability to enforce a code or law. And in this case, we had no noise ordinance that we could really utilize. When you all appointed me to look into this, we met with, obviously, Ms. Lejeune was on board, and I agreed with her. I don't really believe the code department is the effective organization to enforce loud parties of rental tourists in the community on weekends, on Saturday nights. It's not effective. It should be a function of law enforcement. We met with the sheriff's department, with the sheriff's attorney, and asked them what they would like to see in a noise ordinance and if they would be willing to enforce it. Basically, we were told that if we did it properly, they would enforce it. They had several requirements. One, that it was simple, that the officers could be trained in how to use it and how to enforce it, and that it was utilized by other cities, and the courts had ruled on it, and it was obviously enforceable in the courts. That was our main goal, and the reason the ordinance is written this way. I think the city that's closest to us that has a similar ordinance is Panama City Beach. If I'm not mistaken, I think Pensacola has a similar ordinance. In fact, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago that the Kennedys up in their hideaway had gotten charged with the noise ordinance, and they said it was audible at 150 feet, which is identical to what we have. I believe you'll find, though I have not researched it, I believe this ordinance probably is pretty typical of those throughout the country. It's not intended, is not really directed at anyone. It's got a long list of exceptions, such as fireworks, though there are some requirements on it. There's a long list of exceptions that allows people to make noise that you would normally expect in their day-to-day activities. The sheriff's department, frankly, is the one that immediately brought up the decibel meter and wanted it removed. That I agreed fully with that. It's just too difficult to train and utilize. You cannot use your cell phone. It has to be a registered meter. It has to be run by a trained technician, and we just don't have the staff to be called out at 2 o'clock in the morning to do that. Basically, I refer to it as a good neighbor ordinance. What we're really driving at here is we simply want people to not keep their neighbors up all night long when they've got to get up and get their kids to school the next morning and go to work. It's as simple as that. And we looked at laws existing in other communities, and this is the typical way I think it is normally addressed. Mr. Burns can correct me on anything I've said if you'd like an opportunity.
Just to kind of give a little bit of background, I didn't really have a dog in the fight from the policy perspective, and the original version I drafted actually had both a treble and a bass provision in for the noise detectors, and because the original ordinance only had the treble, which they don't call it treble, I think they call it the A scale, and then the C scale was the bass, and so I actually expanded it and then just kind of included this plainly audible standard in it. But then the more we did research around the state, and we called the state attorney's office locally here, and then we met with the sheriff's department and came to find out that no one's going to enforce anything with the decibel meter. The courts aren't going to enforce it. The state attorney's office is not going to enforce it. The sheriff's department doesn't want to enforce it. And that's in the panhandle. This plainly audible standard is constitutional. It's been upheld in many different states, in Florida, in multiple appellate opinions. That kind of shocked me because I figured it would not, or I wasn't concerned necessarily about it being constitutional, but I was kind of surprised that the objective standard is actually the one that there's issues enforcing, and quite frankly, it's because state attorneys can't get trained in time to enforce something like this, and when you can pay a defense attorney with a lot more time on his hands to poke holes in their case in the use of the decibel meter. So from that perspective, that's why this ordinance essentially is an all subjective ordinance, because when we had our final meeting with the sheriff's department, we had a couple majors in there, Captain Nix, the sheriff, and the sheriff's attorney. We kept trying to go back and forth on how to tweak the base and all that. They finally just looked at us and said, listen, you're confusing it for us. Why don't you simplify it so we can actually enforce it? So we cut out all that, and that's why it's subjective as it is now.
My vision of how this would be enforced would be someone would call with a complaint to the sheriff's department, and they would dispatch an officer by utilizing the regulation, would determine if there was a noise violation, be up to the officer's discretion as it was creating a disturbance. Or obviously in commercial areas it's different from non-commercial areas. The officer would have to stand 300 feet from the property. In commercial areas, 150 feet, excuse me, in residential areas to find the noise bothersome. And in that case, he would have the right to warn the people to cease and desist. If they continued, he had to be called back, or they just wouldn't quit, then he would write them a citation for $100, and that progresses up if it continues to $500, and that the $500 would also have a jail penalty if the officer so deemed. It's pretty straightforward. It's very similar to what most communities have. I think you'll find something of this nature. It's kind of hard to operate a city without having some ability to enforce a rule against people that just absolutely refuse to be good neighbors. Mr. Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, there is a difference between having a noise ordinance and having zero entertainment on the harbor. There has to be some middle ground, of course. Where that lies, of course, is sort of subjective, and of course all the stakeholders involved would want to have an opportunity to try to determine where that is. You know, we want concerts to continue on the harbor. I think we want there to be a festive marketplace. I don't think that necessarily having a festive marketplace requires that you be allowed to send whatever noise you're creating on your property out onto your neighbors without any sort of encumbrance or any sort of restrictions. But I mean, we've got property on the harbor, and I just don't buy the complete argument that if we have a noise ordinance at all that's enforceable, we're going to kill the harbor. There has to be some sort of middle ground, and I think that if we had more harbor stakeholder buy-in on exactly how this might affect them, we wouldn't be feeling as much backlash. And to whatever extent the fellow council members feel this way about it, I mean, there's definitely probably room for some tweaks on this. There's definitely some tailoring that could occur, I think, with regards to the South Harbor District, because we don't want this going into some sort of heavy-handed application where we have the worst-case scenario that Mr. Laird was talking about, where they can't operate their businesses, you can't have music at all. But there is a difference between having no music and then just literally having an open deck that can blare out in all 360 directions, because as a council member, I do have to weigh the concerns of people who live directly across from the harbor. We do get complaints that literally all of that comes straight across the harbor. I get that. There has to be a middle ground, and I think that where I'm going with all this is, can this be postponed? Can we have a workshop where we can figure out how to tailor it exactly rather than forcing it through tonight with some sort of idea of what we think would be some good tweaks? I think we need more stakeholder buy-in.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Mr. Destin. We have some unique situations that we need to address. And Mr. Perry's property is one of them down at the East Pass Marina. They have I guess it's short term. I don't know if there's some full-time residents living there, but they're within 150 feet of the boathouse. Is that something they're playing music and they can hear it? Or is it 300 feet from the boathouse's property line, then you move back 300 feet from there, which puts you back up on Highway 98, you stand up there and listen, and if you can hear it, it's too loud. I think that's where there's a lot of confusion is at.
That is correct, 300 foot from
property line.
Property line.
So if the guy's right on the property line and the boathouse is 150 feet away, he can hear the music. He's got to go 300 feet from there to measure.
From the boathouse's property line,
Right.
300 feet from the offender's property line.
So we still have some unique situations, and I know it's been, I have one question for Captain Nix. The question was, at a home, if there were kids in the swimming pool playing loud music, that's disturbing the peace. Is that something that's enforceable? What would the sheriff's department do in that situation?
There's some discretion there, obviously. In that same question that you asked, if there's kids in the pool and they're playing music that's very offensive, would it be a violation? And it would be. There has to be some common sense, obviously, when we enforce. People screaming on the Sea Blaster is not something that you would expect that from the harbor or just outside of the harbor. So to answer your question, it's a case-by-case basis. Are the kids in the pool at 3 o'clock in the morning? Are they in the pool at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? And what kind of noise are we talking about? Are we talking about kids that are playing in the pool? 87703 basically says anything that disturbs the peace and quiet of those that witness the action is a breach of peace. So there has to be obviously there would have to be, it's a case-by-case basis to answer your question. It just would have to be something that we would have to look into.
Okay, thank you so much. But again, I agree with Mr. Destin. I think we need to look at our harbor district and see if we can tweak that area somewhere else. I definitely don't want to go to putting these people out of business or creating headaches, but I know that, you know, the people that spoke tonight said we had an ordinance that was great and it worked. Well, yeah, it works if you're playing loud music because it's not enforceable. I lived on the harbor and the base was rattling the windows. Code enforcement comes out, holds their meter up. Yep, they're good. It's not a violation. Have a good night. So it's useless, and that's why we are going back and at least putting some teeth in it. But that's all I have right now, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Foreman.
Thank you, Mayor. I see this ordinance in some fashion being a piece of paper that the sheriff has in his hip pocket, that he does what Captain Nick says, that he uses his good judgment to determine whether or not it's a real violation or it's a warning or whatever it takes to get the job done. And I think that the business community on the harbor sees this as another regulation that's going to cause them to shut down activities that they really need as part of their what they do. So I think there's a misconception there on that part. And I do think we need to reach out and define. It used to be, as I asked Mr. Crawl here about the business association, they had a working business association on the harbor. They pretty much regulated themselves when it came to activities and to all forms of business that they did on the harbor, and it seemed to have worked very well. I don't know whether it's possible again, but as for the residential areas, those areas that have homeowners associations generally know how to handle it and do something about it. So that covers a big, broad area of the city also. So my feeling is we do need the ordinance. I think it needs maybe a little bit of tailoring to fit the problem, so to speak, so that we're not just arbitrarily going out and applying rules that are incorrect for the violation, so to speak. So that's my comment on it.
I agree with much of what you say, but the frustration I got into with this, because I was president of a homeowner association, there's not a damn thing they can do about it. They call the sheriff's department just like anybody else, and because generally you're talking renters or you're talking short time, and they're not going to be there. They're not going to pay the fine, and they could care less. But anyway, Councilmember Ramsell.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with what Councilmember Destin brought up, and that's that I think we need to look at South Harbor mixed use slightly differently, especially considering the fact that on the books, and it's well documented, it's the festive marketplace. How festive is it if we're not allowing them to be festive? But with that said, I mean, that doesn't mean that they should be allowed to carry on till 12, 2, 3 in the morning. So, you know, I would look at perhaps something that they're limited by times. They're allowed to have a certain level until maybe 9 p.m. during the week or something. Maybe we look at it from that perspective, because I agree the South Harbor District is intended to be a festive area. I do note that there is an exception in here, 14-56, item 17. And that actually allows for outdoor events with a permit. So anytime there is something going on that's a special event, a concert or something going on, it is going to be allowed. So with that in mind, I concur with potentially looking at South Harbor mixed use slightly differently.
Councilman Ramswell, actually, Captain Nix pointed that exception out to me earlier, and I think the word outdoor accidentally got put in there, but the sheriff's department was more comfortable enforcing if it just said events, just because there could be an indoor event that might need to be permitted. So I think that would have to be cut out too for the sheriff's department to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Councilmember Dixon.
Yeah, it seems to me that really the problem and concern area that we have is certainly the South Harbor. Can we can we take the South Harbor out of this for now and work and adopt this for the rest of the areas in Destin and come back and work on this issue a little further? Or is this something that we got to take it all or nothing? Can we, for right now, take away the festive marketplace area and basically come back to that with some different type of something? Are we allowed to do that?
We can.
Yes, you could. You could cut the South Harbor mixed use district out, but I would go ahead and probably plan on that workshop that you're talking about tonight too, just and fix it in short orders, because you don't want to leave just one area of the city kind of exempt from anything. So.
Oh, I agree. Not exempt. Of course, they fall under the rules that we have in place today. But you know, it may be that we have to go a little further with the distance measuring or something like that with them. You know, with the South Harbor mixed use. I'm not trying to water this down, and I'm trying to take anything away. But I think really where we really got going on this was the rental homes, and I do understand that that's a big problem where you'll have 20 or 30 or 40 people staying in a home that's anywhere, Crystal Beach, Holiday Isle, whatever it may be, and nobody around there is getting any sleep. And I do know that some of the bands and things like that are outdoor in the harbor sometimes the sound can travel across the harbor, and it's very difficult for anybody to get sleep. But I do think that we do have a little bit of a unique situation here that I think might need a little bit more fine tuning, but I hate to see us not act on the rest of it because of that. So that's where I'm at.
Mr. Burns, correct me if I'm wrong, but we eliminate by voting for this, that we can put an exemption in for the downtown, for the boardwalk area. But another part of this eliminates any restrictions on basically we remove all code by passing this. All the old stuff is gone, but it's not enforceable or usable anyway. So I don't know that you really lose anything, but yeah. And we can add that exemption in. Now the LPA voted unanimously for this, but it does not have to go back to them, does it?
And I'm not saying to totally disregard this. No, what I am saying is that we might need to, because of the items that have been brought up here tonight, and the fact that we all know that it's been called a festive marketplace since its inception, I think that we possibly could change the parameters for that particular area just a little bit, but and go ahead and, like I said, get the rest of it in play. We deal with all of it so long we'll finally have the other people from Crystal Beach showing up, and they'll be saying that we want to be able to have party houses, and the longer this goes, the longer it takes to get it done.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Well, you have three options actually on that. Real quick before y'all move, you could just cut South Harbor mixed use out completely tonight and pass it on first reading and move to the second reading, or you could send it back for first reading at the next meeting, and we could take the South Harbor mixed use and kind of create it where it'll only, or the old ordinance will apply to that temporarily, or we could make changes that y'all are thinking about tonight just temporarily for the South Harbor mixed use, maybe change the distance requirement for that one zoning area if that's what you had in mind. So you have three options tonight. There's only one way to move to the second reading.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion tonight, Dan, if it's okay. I'll make a motion that we will implement everything that we've talked about tonight in the noise ordinance to exclude the festive marketplace or the South Harbor mixed use, and have that section of the city utilize the existing ordinance that's in place today and establish a workshop to work on these issues within the next 30 days. And is that it? I think that's it.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify two things, and I know the guys from the South Harbor aren't here anymore, Mr. Perry is. But when Mr. Jarvis asked what was the justification for this was, it was because what we have in place is not enforceable. And that's pretty simple. We need, if we're going to have ordinances, they need to be able to be enforced. And with what Alan Laird brought to us, was the complaints to the city. Was that a list of the complaints to the city on the noise?
I believe they did a records request from Citizen Serve, which is
But-
everything that was put in.
But it wasn't from the police department.
No.
Now, if you look at the complaints y'all get, I bet you get a handful.
Yes, sir, we get quite a bit.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot are from residential areas.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And we get complaints, we get some complaints on Holiday Isle from businesses on the harbor.
Sure.
We have a good working relationship with those businesses. A lot of times,
Yeah,
if it's a lot of base coming from 116 Harbor Boulevard, I just go over there and tell them, you got a lot of bass in your music, can you help me out?
Sure.
And they cut it down.
Sure.
We found in the research that I did with residential areas, well, first, to back up, one of the concerns about the existing one requires a code enforcement officer from the city to go wherever that violation is in the city, whether it's a packed nightclub, and there's no guarantee that I can guarantee the safety of that individual, because if I'm called away for a disturbance while they're trying to do their noise thing, it leaves them in a pretty bad place. So that's the one problem with the existing ordinance. The majority of the noise complaints that we've got, with the exception of the house parties where arrests were made for numerous violations, we ask people to turn the noise down, comply. It's a breach of peace. You'll go to jail. And we got compliance. I think it was 98.9% of the time we got compliance. So the majority of the time, if we're called to any place, any business on the harbor, if it's due to loud music, a lot of times it's us just asking the manager, can you help us out a little bit, because we're getting a complaint from wherever it's coming from. So to answer your question, we get a lot of complaints. I did a 3-year study on it, research on it, and there was numerous that they do not go to the city. That's tracked by us.
Sure.
Could I expand on that just once? Really, the South Harbor area, though, is not the big complaint area. It's kind of scattered wherever the parties happen to be. There's maybe only 2 businesses on South Harbor that get complaints, and am I agree with that?
The majority of them come from the spring breakers and wherever the spring breakers are at, in Crystal Beach and the areas where they stay, and throughout the summertime when they come to stay. That is correct.
And the ladder for the violations, would that go to the property owner, the renter, or would that go to the person who rented the house?
A lot of times we just get compliance.
Sure.
We basically ask for compliance and we get it. If we arrest somebody out of the house, we don't tell the property owner. They can tell the property owner they got arrested, but we don't do that.
Okay.
Would you say most of the complaints that you looked at when you did your survey or whatever came after a certain time? Like, did they occur after 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, or was it just all over the board?
No, ma'am. Most of them they're just sporadic. They're all over the place.
Well, to me, 98.9% compliance, that's a compelling figure. You know, I mean, it would help to have a enforceable code on the books, but barring, the South Harbor mixed use, which I'm not sure I really want to do something about,
It codifies and gives the officers a toolkit. They can warn, they can fine as low as 100. They don't have to go all the way to disturbing the peace and arrest them. You've got steps in there that you can take.
Sure. So I'll support this for the residential neighborhoods, and I'm open to, in terms of the South Harbor, I'm directionless. So.
Councilmember Marler.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I was born with a silver microphone in my hand. That being said, I've had a lot of dealings with sound equipment and things over the years because of my musical background. The one thing that hasn't been mentioned about the South Harbor distance is how the contour of the land is. If you look at the contour of the land and you drop down the hill, what you have is a band shell, basically. You have a sound point where the sound echoes backwards from that point and actually makes it louder, and then it goes across the water to Holiday Isle, and it sort of sounds louder than it normally is. That being said, also, part of this ordinance is stating that it will be within a certain footage 300 feet of the property. Now, is that deputy going to get out 300 feet into the harbor? I don't think so. So I agree that we need the harbor district has to be a little bit more unique. And I think we need to do a little bit further study on the sound movement, if you want to call it that. I can't really come up with the right word that I'm thinking of, because of the fact, yeah, there you go, amplification. Because of the fact that the lower end is basically a echo chamber. If you notice, if you go into theaters, including in this room right here, if you'll look on the back wall, we have these little sound deadening devices here, so it makes it a little less the sound bounces correctly. So I think that's one thing we need to look at. So I'm in favor of cutting out the South Harbor District, and if we have to make it more unique than we do the rest of it, then I think that would help too, and I do support getting the residential area. So anyway.
I see no further discussion.
Yes, sir.
Hang on just a moment. Ms. Moore.
I think there's a way that we can put in a paragraph or a sentence or something in this ordinance that covers the South Harbor District, but doesn't, it gives the deputy the authority to go in and to enforce the ordinance if necessary without getting too specific. I don't know how else to say that. That's for a lawyer to figure out, but I think you can put it in there, and that way we're not saying we're going to do this for the rest of the city, but not the South Harbor.
Mr. Burns, my dealings in law tell me that's pretty difficult to do.
Well, we're going to have to go back to first reading anyway with the current pending motion as it is, but we can look into that as part of the workshop process, because you can't cut down on types of speech, and that starts getting into some First Amendment issues there, and but you can designate a whole zoning area like the South Harbor mixed use and apply something across the board differently in that zoning area as opposed to the rest of the areas.
Yes.
So I'll just have to figure out the constitutional way to do what you're asking, if that's the direction of the council.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
There you go.
Mayor?
I do think people as a property right have the right to the quiet use of their property, and I hate to say that you pick out one section of town and say,
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
you no longer have the right to peace and quiet. You're going to listen to whatever your neighbor decides to throw at you. Seems to be a little extreme. Excuse me, Ms. Lejeune, go ahead.
Yes, sir, if you don't mind, sir. The motion that's on the floor includes the request for a workshop, and of course, my assumption is that you would like for myself and staff to put on this workshop. What I need from council, sir, is better direction as to what we're doing with the workshop. Now, there's been discussion here of how it can be tweaked, and staff has reviewed this ordinance for sufficiency with our comp plan and our land development codes, but this was not staff initiated. This was created in collaboration with our city attorney and the sheriff's office. So if we're going to hold the workshop as staff, what is the end result that you would like us to come back with so that the city attorney and the sheriff's office can then write the proper language? What information do you want me to acquire from the people we're inviting to the workshop?
Thank you. One thing that I haven't answered your question, but one thing I would like to see at the workshop is some examples of how this is going to affect a property owner like Mr. Perry. If there's a complaint at the boathouse, where is that officer going to stand, 300 feet from it? Because they're under the impression that, they're going to stand right on the property line or 300 feet from that business, but that's not the case. So I think the public needs some examples at that workshop of, you have a property on the South Harbor, where's that officer going to stand in relation to that piece of property or to that business? to listen for the noise. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're asking, and I'm sure that the sheriff's office can provide those examples in any given forum. I have no problem with doing a workshop, but I need to know what is the goal of the workshop. We know the people will come. We know that they will voice their opinion. We know that the city attorney and the sheriff's office will be able to create language that will help to mitigate noise without being as stringent as it currently is. What information am I trying to extract from the stakeholders to bring back to the city attorney and the sheriff's office to help them tweak that language?
We have to have a noise ordinance in place. What's going to satisfy those stakeholders? Or what do they be able to work with?
Nothing?
Yeah, I agree. They've been having feuds down there since the 60s that I can remember, putting fences up and on the property lines because they're mad at each other, and if one gets to play music too loud and he's mad at his neighbor, well, you got to have something in place somewhere.
And
so I understand what you're asking. So
yeah, we've been through 2 workshops with the businesses down on the harbor, and unless I have a specific goal, I can't imagine that it will be successful.
Councilmember Dixon.
Yeah, the workshops that, I fully think that the people that are especially here tonight feel like they have not been able to voice their opinion about it. I don't know whether the workshops weren't, where they didn't attend the workshops, didn't know about the workshops, didn't whatever. I fully agree and know that there's going to have to be some changes there. But, as far as the way the land lays there and how far it is from the actual road, how far some of the lounges that we're talking about are from the roadway, there's got to be something that we're going to have to, because I don't know if we're going to be able to go on their property to measure it. And so I don't know what we're going to do with it other than to say that it is a problem area and that we're going to have to look at it in some form or fashion. But I don't know if basically putting it in here with this being that we're calling it a festive marketplace, and to the point of that is that doesn't mean that people should be out there in a festive marketplace at 4 o'clock in the morning, raising hell and showing out. So basically we still have the disturbance of the peace stuff here. So this is, in my opinion, a way that we can come up with something, let those voices be heard, come up with something that is fair to everybody. We're not looking to shut anybody's business down. And I got to tell you, I don't think that if this was enacted today, this particular, it would do anything to cut any of these businesses that we're talking about down, because they're talking about children's events that I know the children aren't making a noise at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever it may be. We know that. So basically, I think what's happened is that we've got some scare tactics going on that's gotten people all riled up, and I understand it, and the fact that people think they may lose their jobs because of this is not that damaging, I can tell you. But I do understand the frustration. I do understand the reluctance to go along with this, and I do understand the particular nature of the festive marketplace or the harbor. So I think that particular area might need a little more focus. And if nothing else, let them say what they want to say, and let them object to however they want to object to it. But ultimately, there's going to have to be some changes to that. And I just think these changes are not quite ready yet. And I think that if we get the other stuff done, then we can come back with this. And if we want to make recommendations to the city manager of what we feel individually, we can do that. If we want to attend a workshop and listen to what they got to say and adopt it exactly like this, we can also do that. But I think that basically they just want to be heard and heard a little further.
Mr. Foreman.
Yes, Mayor. Well, we've got examples of the problems we need to fix. The Sheriff's Department has them. We need to review those. We've got Mr. Laird's comments that he reviewed and put together examples of. So the starting point would be to fix the problems that we've had in the past. How would you do that?
Councilman Foreman, I was thinking we could have 3 simple criteria that they could come in and focus on. we would set a separate section out for the South Harbor mixed use within the new ordinance, and just have a separate time of day that's enforceable, separate distance requirements, and then separate exemptions that only apply. That'd be the logical way to approach it. And then they could just come in, voice their concerns, and y'all can decide which ones y'all like and don't like.
Will the council be
Councilmember-
attending the workshop, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, like hours of operation, all this stuff, everything, not, we're cutting hours out, don't everybody go on that. But I'm saying how loud you are at certain times of the day, at certain times of the morning, please.
We have a fairly large number. I wouldn't expect to do this too quickly.
Yeah, and Mayor, I want to call the question of this.
Okay, Councilmember Ramsdell first.
He pretty much said what I was going to say. I was just going to say that maybe we look at we have the no audible noise between like 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. during the week, and then not between midnight and 8 a.m. on weekends or something. But that can be decided later. I'll go with calling the question.
Call the question. Unanimous, yes. I think we'll do this one quicker. First reading of ordinance 1727-CC. Mr. Burns, would you read by title?
Ordinance 17-24-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Article 2, relating to agencies, authorities, boards, panels, commissions, and committees, provide for amending Section 2-37, procedures for new members, provide for incorporation into Code of Ordinances, provide for conflicting provisions, provide for authority, provide for severability, provide for an effective date. Am I on the wrong ordinance? All right. Okay, my book's outable. It's probably a Freudian slip to skip the cemetery ordinance. Okay, ordinance. Ordinance 17-27-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin regulating city cemeteries, providing for authority, providing for purpose, providing for modifying City Code Section 7-23, burial plots and mausoleum niches, Section 17-28, tombstones, monuments, and markers, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And we're here on first reading.
Ms. Lejeune, explanation.
Yes, sir. This was based on a request from Councilmember Marlar, and we had brought information forward to council, and they were interested in us bringing forward changes to the existing ordinance to allow headstones in a certain area of the cemetery. So each section of the new cemetery contains 76 burial plots. And we have estimated that each burial plot with an upright headstone would take an additional 1 to 2 minutes to mow, trim, and blow off, increasing the total time to about 1.25 to 2.5 hours. So averaging all of this in and using the average hourly wages and benefits cost for staff, we are estimating that the increased cost for personnel services would be approximately between $965 to $1,930 annually. The estimated equipment cost would be an average of $500 annually. So at this time, this is the only concern that we have as staff. We do not have a maintenance fee. We maintain the cemetery in perpetuity. We have no problem with the amendments to allow headstones in a certain area of the cemetery. I may come back to council once we start getting headstones in there, and it appears that the maintenance is taking more time than we have anticipated. I may ask for additional resources to maintain the headstone portion of the cemetery, but other than that, and an increase price for plots designated in the new phase of the cemetery, which would be with upright headstones. We're looking at asking a price of $2,000 for residents and $3,000 for non-residents to maintenance the headstones. Other than that, that's the only issue that we would have with putting headstones in a certain part of the cemetery.
Thank you. Councilmember Marler.
I'd like to go ahead and make the recommended motion and get that out of the way, and then we can talk about it. I make a motion to approve ordinance 1727-CC on first reading and direct staff to schedule it for second reading and bring back a proposed resolution adopting fees for the purchase of burial plots at the Destin Memorial Cemeteries for the council's review and approval.
Second.
Mr. Braden seconds. Mr. Dixon.
I don't want to talk about it. I was going to make a motion.
You don't want to be 6 feet under yet, right?
Okay, Councilmember Ramsell.
I have a question, though. We didn't discuss increasing the price of such plots at our meeting. How was this decided?
You're going to come back by second reading with price.
Are you referring to how we came up with that particular price?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a directive of council unless I missed something, was it?
We discussed at the meeting where this was brought up that there would be an increased cost for maintenance. And during that discussion, I was asked to bring back all of this information in the form of an ordinance for first reading. And we've put the math in the cover sheet as far as how we came up to that estimated amount.
No, I meant in terms of changing the price of plots in the section that would have headstones.
That's how we're going to pay for the increased maintenance.
Okay, all right, okay.
That would call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. Item number 6, second reading of ordinance 17-24CC. Mr. Burns, would you read by title?
Ordinance 17-24-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Article 2, relating to agencies, authorities, boards, panels, commissions, and committees, providing for amending Section 2-37, procedures for new members, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for authority, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And we're here on second reading, and this is a public hearing.
Ms. Lejeune, explanation?
Yes, sir. There's been no changes to this ordinance since the first reading. This will allow the City Council to appoint students from outside the city boundaries to the Destin Youth Council. Under consent agenda, under item L is the resolution that speaks directly to how many and under what circumstances the council can appoint non-residential students, and also makes provision for having quorum regarding residents and non-residents.
This is a public hearing. Any member of the audience who would like to speak on this matter is welcome to do so. Not seeing any movement. Councilmember Dixon.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make the recommended motion. I move to approve proposed ordinance 17-24-CC on second reading.
I have a motion. I have a second. Seeing no further discussion, I call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. On the consent. You got 5 minutes. Okay. We're going to adjourn for 5 minutes. I'm going to wing this by ear, and we're going to start. We pulled 2 items from the consent agenda. The first would be item number J, request to approval to create 75 by 5 finger pier. There's an error in there. It says 75 by 75. It should read 75 by 5 feet. The Dixie Lady, and actually, I thought no. I'm assuming it's pulled because somebody wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, Mayor, I needed to talk about it, but only to the extent that I'd like to separate it from a vote because I need to abstain, but I'd like to vote on the rest of the consent agenda. I have an interest in the company that neighbors this property, so I need to abstain from the vote and separate it out.
If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and call for the vote on this. Let's see, do we have to read that by title?
Item J, no.
No, okay. I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote on that. If there's no further discussion, not seeing any, this is item J with the correction of 75 foot by 5 foot. Please.
Mayor, someone has to make a motion though on it.
Sorry.
I will make a motion to vote on item 7J.
We got a second from him.
Okay, good.
Ray got it. We're good.
We're legal.
Yeah, keep good.
Well, we are, you know,
6 yes. I do count correctly. Okay, we also have pulled item M, resolution 1737. And for what purpose?
That was on my call, and I don't know if Ms. Lejeune, you wanted to add anything, or if I should just roll with it. Do you have a preference?
No, ma'am, you can introduce it.
Okay, very good. So at the Florida League of Cities annual conference in August, they had wanted to pull together and have a special meeting of any city officials and staff that wanted to discuss short-term rentals and vacation rentals and the issues surrounding them. And the meeting actually was so popular that it literally was standing room only. And so what emerged from that meeting was the fact that we're all, as cities and municipalities located throughout Florida, having issues with short-term rentals and vacation rentals. They may be different in some ways and same in others, but they're all stemming from that. And so what we wanted to do at the league was essentially get the word out that what the state has tried to do in 2 separate sessions was essentially take away the decision-making from the cities so that the state would just literally write out their own laws that would be just blanketing the entire state. So what is good for us would be good for Crestview. What is good for us would be good for Miami. And as we all know, one city is not like another. We're all very unique. We all have very different problems. We all have very unique issues to address. And so who better really to address the issues within a city than the people that actually live and work there and understand the dynamics of that city. So I've gotten a little bit of feedback, and apparently there is some miscommunication and misunderstanding about what this resolution would do. This absolutely in no way says that we don't want to have short-term rentals here. That is absolutely not what it says. In fact, we obviously understand that we're based on tourism and fishing. We need to have people here, and we want people here. What this does is actually take a look at any statutes and anything that's going on. It gives us the right to establish our own ordinances and not have the state dictate those to us. So, I at one point, and I think it stemmed from item on the front page, the second from the bottom, where it says it wouldn't allow local governments to prohibit short-term vacation rentals from a community. And what that actually means is maybe some cities don't want them at all. That's not us. But if you even take a look at Destin right now, we do have areas of town where they aren't allowed. Indian Bayou is one, Indian Trail is one, Kellaire is another. So literally, we're not looking at changing anything on our books at all. All this does is tell the state, hey, we need to be allowed to make our own ordinances and decide what's best for our city. You guys in Tallahassee don't necessarily know what's right for Destin, or what's right for Fort Walton, or what's right for Miami. So that is essentially the entire goal of this resolution. If it passes this evening, we'd like to move forward and present it to the Okaloosa delegation tomorrow evening. All the different local municipalities that were in attendance at that meeting in Orlando, I guess we were in, are looking to do something similar. So this would be a very good template for other cities to use to really say, look, us as cities, we want to be able to make our own decisions. And these cities are in support of that. And in a nutshell, that's what it's about. Ms. Lejeune, did you have anything to add?
No, ma'am. The only comment that I had also received was on that area where it would say ordinance and regulations to prohibit vacation rentals. When I explained that it was and/or regulate the duration and frequency of rentals, of vacation rentals. It was exactly as you had stated, that it's not necessarily for Destin, but for other cities that may want to do this. That the city of Destin is not looking to prohibit vacation rentals, but just to be able to establish some additional regulations so that they can be held accountable as other commercial lodging establishments are.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to approve Resolution 17-37.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Not seeing any, I call for the vote. Unanimous, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I go ahead and make a motion to accept the rest of the consent agenda.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Marlar seconds. Any discussion? Not seeing any, call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. We're down to the comments and presentations from council. Councilmember Braden, you would like to lead us off?
Thank you, Mayor. I spoke with Mr. Howard with Howard Group. He gave me a call a couple weeks ago. We were discussing the purchase of the Gulf Power, and he was asking if he thought it would be a good idea if the council went to Winter Park to talk to those folks about the pros and cons of, when they purchase their power. If the council and the city attorney was flown down there to Winter Park at no expense to the city or the council, could that happen? And I wanted to bring it up and get a little direction from the attorney if that was possible for something like that to take place.
Yes, and actually, I must have indirectly found out about this because I believe someone contacted the city and the issue was forwarded to me about a week ago, and I researched it and actually contacted the Commission on Ethics, and the answer is yes. There are some restrictions on how it would be handled, though. The whole council cannot travel together down there. There's ethics opinions out there saying that's a sunshine law violation. And then the council, once you're down in Winter Park, cannot all meet at the same time with the Winter Park folks. It makes it somewhat kind of unwieldy from that aspect, but it can be done. It's just there's those two restrictions. But the Howard Group can basically donate money to the city to pay for that expense of sending everyone down there. You just can't travel together, and y'all can't meet together with anyone down there.
So we'd all have to travel individual there and back?
Correct.
Okay, just give me there. I think that's all I have right now, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question for the city manager, actually. What is the status of the beach survey that was done as a follow-up to the workshop that we had?
Yes, it is being compiled into report format. right now by Ms. Arunditi, who is our facilitator, and then as soon as I have that report, I will be bringing it back at a council meeting with basically some options for council to vote on a recommendation on how to move forward.
Great, thank you. And that's actually all I had. And obviously, I want to send my best wishes and condolences to everybody back in Texas, and especially here in Florida, as we're now facing a similar situation as Texas just faced. So best thoughts and prayers to everyone.
Councilmember Dixon.
One thing here tonight, and you know, I don't want to get in a long, drawn-out discussion about it, but where are we in the what I call junk, and the other people call those barges or whatever they are, and the fact that they are now starting again to litter up our waterways? And you know, where are we in the code enforcement aspect of making sure that that junk, and I'll repeat that word junk, doesn't end up in our bayous and in our harbor? And where are we with that now? And I know just from looking that some of it's already in some of our bayous. So I'd like to know where we are with that, and believe me, the rest of it will be in our bayous within time if we don't deal with this. So what I'm looking at is a absolute proactive approach to getting this stuff gone, somehow, some way. If we need to, and I'm fully willing to go this route, if we need to hire off-duty law enforcement to come in and take care of these issues, I'll be glad to make that motion, but we've got to take care of the issues. If we don't, what's going to happen? There's probably 20 or 25 different businesses that are at Crab Island. Next year, that'll be 35 to 45 businesses at Crab Island. And if all that junk ends up in our bayous, in our harbor, we're never going to get rid of it. So we have to be very proactive about getting this stuff, making sure, one, it doesn't come in, and two, that we get it out if it does. And you know, so I just want to reemphasize that none of that is acceptable. If they have, I don't care if we've adopted ordinances, we have adopted regulations, we've done everything we can to make sure that we put into place the procedures it is that we have to put into place to get rid of that stuff, and I want to make sure that we're working on that.
Well, we have the ordinances in place, sir, and we have the Marine Unit Officer. So I would need at this point to defer to Captain Nix as to are we patrolling the bayous at this point in looking at enforcing this particular ordinance?
I will talk with Captain Paco tomorrow. He is part of the contingency team to go south, and he's going to take the Marine units with him when he goes south, with the exception of ours. So I will find out. I wasn't aware that they were doing that. If somebody would bring that to my attention, I would definitely make sure that they're aware of where they are, where they're putting them, so we can have proactive enforcement on it.
Yeah, and I can tell you now that they are in the Marlar Bayou. They're in there, and Joe's Bayou, and Destin Harbor, and basically everywhere we got water, we got that junk. So, you know, and I'll say it again, junk, okay? And if we could get some assistance from whoever it is that actually is the responsible party for that, I just cannot imagine that to continue like it's continuing. To me, it's embarrassing. It is, you know, I don't know what to do with it, to be honest with you, but I do know that I don't want to see it in our bayous, in our harbor. Thank you.
Councilmember Foreman.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Marlar.
I have nothing tonight either, Mayor.
Councilmember Destin.
I had nothing. Where do we stand with regards to discussing with the county about Crab Island? They have the authority to regulate. The question is, I think, in limbo, what would Destin want if they were to regulate? And I don't know if that conversation has occurred.
No,
well, it hasn't occurred, but I'm just wondering will it occur and when?
Right, that was another requested workshop, and the month of September was challenging to find a date for council, and while we were trying to schedule the Crab Island workshop, the Gulf Power workshop request came forward, and that became the priority. Now I have an additional noise ordinance workshop, so I am going to do my very best to try to schedule that Crab Island workshop as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you. Mayor, I have nothing else.
Councilmember Morgan.
I have no idea why this young lady would want to get involved in city government, but I would like to appoint Miss Catherine O'Leary to the Destin Youth Council.
Second.
And I wish her luck.
We have a motion, second. Discussion? If not, I call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. City Attorney, you can speak for the land use attorney too, I guess.
I have nothing tonight. I think we can call it a night. So.
Excellent. Any comments from the audience? Any discussion?
Carrie Harbarger, 413 Spring Lane. I just wanted to share this. I wanted to ask when you do your workshop, I may be out of town. May I address the dais, please? I'm particularly interested in Mrs. Lejeune maybe seeing this. I don't want to complain about staff, but I would ask that the council evaluate the price of the plots of the cemetery, because the care that we receive now is, I find, atrocious, and I'm sorry. When we find American flags strewn across our cemetery because we want to make it jobs easier for people, I almost think the whole cemetery needs to be weeded. And I wanted the pictures. I know we'll work out. The price was a problem with me. I have more, a lot more. There's a lot of damage to our headstones with a lawnmower. I think they should all be weed whacked, and that's quite a price, but when you compare the price for the employees compared to the price of the headstones that are being damaged, but I wanted to share, but I didn't want to make them public, so I wanted you to be able to pass them around and show the council. Maybe that could help us with the price in the end, because a 100% increase is a bit much, and our families only work 6 months out of the year here, and we need to make it affordable as well. So it's not like they do that great of a job, and I don't mean to be critical, but please do share those. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Councilmember Dixon.
I'll make this very short. If we do see these prices are too high, we can come back and adjust this if we need to, and we may need to. So thank you.
If there's no further business for the council, adjourn the meeting.